The Atlanta Falcons have decided to re-sign former starting nickel cornerback D. Alfred. This move seems to be more about creating competition than anything else. For those who may not be familiar, Alfred was an undrafted free agent in 2020, coming out of Tusculum University, a Division II school in Tennessee. Fun fact, I only know about Tusculum because my roommate's girlfriend, now his fiancée, played tennis there, and it's known for having a strong tennis program. Before joining the NFL, Alfred spent some time in the Canadian Football League with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, where he even won a couple of Grey Cups. He made a solid impact on the Falcons' defense in 2022, proving to be a valuable asset as a nickel corner. However, last season saw a decline in his performance, which is likely why the team chose not to place a tender on him as a restricted free agent. Instead, they allowed him to explore the market. When the Falcons let both Alfred and Troy Anderson test free agency, it didn't mean they were closing the door on their return. It was more about giving them the chance to see what offers they could get. If they found something that fit the Falcons' budget, they could return. Unfortunately for Nate Landman, he found a better deal elsewhere, signing with either the Chargers or the Rams. But Alfred didn't receive any enticing offers, so he's back in Atlanta, where he'll likely compete for the starting nickel position. With recent comments from defensive coordinator Raheem Morris at the NFL owners meeting, it's clear that the competition is heating up. Alfred will be battling with Clark Phillips for that nickel spot. I don't think either player will be handed the job outright. Phillips is expected to be one of the first cornerbacks on the field during OTAs, likely joining A.J. Terrell and Mike Hughes in the starting lineup. However, I anticipate a lot of rotation between Phillips and Alfred. Last season, Alfred recorded 11 pass breakups, which might sound impressive, but it's important to note that he was targeted frequently and gave up a lot of yards. More targets can lead to more opportunities for pass breakups, but anyone who followed the Falcons closely last year could see that Alfred was somewhat of a liability in the secondary. I'm not against the re-signing. In fact, I think it's a smart move to bring in competition for Phillips, especially since Phillips hasn't played nickel corner at all during his first 2 seasons with the Falcons or during his time at the University of Utah. I always believed that re-signing D. Alfred could be a smart move for the right price. If things don't pan out, at least you have a solid backup corner with starting experience. If an injury occurs, you'd likely feel more comfortable having him on the field than relying on a late-round draft pick that you're not familiar with. Looking at Clark Phillips, he's only taken 36 snaps as a nickel corner in college and the pros, which shows he still has a lot to learn in that role. Bringing back a player who has experience starting there, even if he has regressed, is a reasonable decision. I'm on board with this signing because it's not a major commitment. While I don't have the exact contract details at the moment, I'd estimate it to be around 1 year for $2.5 to $3 million. It's not a groundbreaking deal, and that's perfectly fine. While we're discussing the defensive backs, let's take a moment to think about what the Falcons' secondary might look like in 2025. I know it might not be the most thrilling topic, but it's important to consider the team as a whole, not just individual players. Mike Hughes is also returning after a solid couple of years with the Falcons, especially in 2023. If you switched Hughes's and A.J. Terrell's numbers, I bet many of you would have thought Hughes was the better corner early in the season. That's not a knock on Terrell, who had one of his better seasons, finally getting back into the interception column with 2 picks and 6 pass breakups. He allowed a reasonable 587 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not exactly lockdown numbers, but he wasn't a liability either. Hughes started the 2024 season strong, but as the year progressed, his performance dipped a bit. Still, the cornerback room has some good continuity, and worst-case scenario, you have an average CB2 and CB3, which isn't the worst situation to be in. However, I wouldn't assume that the Falcons won't draft a cornerback in the second round. It's possible they brought back Alfred because they weren't thrilled with the options available in that round, but that seems a bit of a stretch. I think they re-signed Alfred mainly to add some competition for the nickel position. Now, before we dive deeper into today's discussion about the defensive backs, let's take a moment to appreciate the importance of having nutritious meals ready to go. Eating well has never been easier, allowing you to focus on what you love while enjoying satisfying meals. Whether it's quick breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, or delicious dinners, having these options can make life a lot simpler, especially when you're busy. It's a great way to avoid the last-minute scramble of grocery shopping or ordering takeout after a long day. Let's shift our focus to the safety position, where the Falcons recently made a new signing, Jordan Fuller. He's stepping in to replace Justin Simmons, who seems unlikely to return. With Fuller and Jesse Bates now set to be the starting safeties, there are still some concerns about depth. We saw some promising moments from Helms, a former seventh-round pick from Alabama during his rookie year, but he missed all of 2024. This leaves the Falcons with just 3 safeties for what ideally should be a 4-man rotation, raising questions about everyone except Bates. Fuller wasn't signed to a massive contract, which is a good sign. He played under Raheem Morris in Los Angeles before moving to Carolina, where he missed half the season. When he was on the field, he performed as an average starter. There's definitely potential with Fuller, especially considering the value he brings for the price. However, I don't think this signing rules out the possibility of the Falcons drafting another safety. Helms is still somewhat of an unknown, and while we might be building him up in our minds, we should temper our expectations to avoid disappointment. Given that the Falcons only have 5 draft picks, they may not have the opportunity to target a safety, but it would be wise to consider it. Now, if we take a step back and look at the entire defense, the current front 5 has some competition. I believe all positions are up for grabs except for those held by David Onyemata and Floyd. While I have these players listed as starters, there's no reason why Braylon Trice can't come into training camp and challenge Ivican. The same goes for Morgan Fox, who joined from the Chargers. Why can't Zach Harrison lose his starting spot to Kareem, who showed some impressive plays after being elevated to the active roster? Overall, my takeaway is that Atlanta needs a strong draft weekend. When you look at the pass rush, corners, and safeties, there's still a lot of work to be done. Reviewing the offseason with notable additions and subtractions, it's hard to argue that the team got better. They swapped Grady Jarrett for Morgan Fox, Juden for Floyd, Nate Landman for Divine Diablo, and Simmons for Fuller. You could make a case that they downgraded in several areas, which is a tough reality for Falcons fans to face. I can't convince anyone that this defense improved. If it struggled last year and has seemingly gotten worse this offseason, that puts immense pressure on the upcoming draft. With only 3 picks that hold significant value, a first, a second, and a fourth, the Falcons must find quality players in those early rounds. Missing on those picks simply isn't an option. When it comes to the draft, the Falcons need to aim for players who can make an immediate impact. Similar to what the Rams achieved last year with their first and second round picks, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. The Falcons need a draft like the Rams had in 2024, where their top selections are not just contributors but essential pieces of the team right away. As it stands, I'm not confident that's the direction they're heading. That wraps up today's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you found our discussion on the re-signing and the overall state of the defense insightful. If you enjoyed the breakdown, please hit that thumbs up button on your way out. I'll catch everyone later.